This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. Today, we're diving into yet another chaotic PR circus. I think many of you have seen the headlines or you've had them shoved into your feed about the will they, won't they leading up to this stupid trip. Today, another flurry of headlines now of an alleged snub at the palace. Can you believe this headline coming out of the Sun today? One is not amused. King Charles refuses to be pushed around by Harry and indulge in constant state of chaos amid palace snub row. Being reported out of the UK, allegedly, King Charles slammed the door on Prince Harry's request for accommodation. I want to ask you this question. Is anybody really buying this shit? Look, we're talking about Buckingham Palace, an institution that treats its PR strategy with the same surgical precision as a military operation. The idea that a 77-year-old monarch would just snap and accidentally spark a global media firestorm over a guest bedroom, I think is just laughable. Like, what are we doing here? Like, aren't these reporters embarrassed reporting on this stuff? Everything that comes out of the palace is curated. Every source close to the king, every leaked detail about a missed deadline is not a mistake. It's a deliberate choice. They aren't just letting this happen. They're actively managing this for whatever reason, is beyond me. When you think about this, if the palace wanted Harry to have a quiet place to stay, you can bet he'd have a quiet place to stay. How many times have we seen Harry fly off to various parts of the world, showing up in China, Ukraine, Angola? I'm willing to bet that Harry has been back to the UK more than we are allowed to know about. When Harry wants to fly under the radar, we know that he does. When you look at this, if Harry was really concerned about his security, he wouldn't be releasing his full itinerary, as well as giving details about the so-called threats that are coming up in this alleged report that was created. All of this is just for show. And it's absolutely mental seeing how many people are going along with believing this drama, this so-called rift between Harry and his family. Like, you can't make this up. Seriously, at one point, do you all remember that Harry and his family were not talking? Like, there was no connection with the palace and there was no interaction. Now, all of a sudden, he's having like weekly conversations with the palace? Why? In fact, why has the last 10 years been one giant cluster F? We know that the palace and the monarchy have a history of being strategic and savvy. Like, I always found it so bizarre that people didn't push back in the narrative that we were fed about Harry and Meghan blindsiding the Queen when Megxit came up. You mean to tell me that the Queen had no idea that these two were going to go and move across the Atlantic to North America? Come on. This is a woman who has access to all types of intelligence. You don't think she didn't know what was going on, or at least had an idea of the plans that Harry and Meghan were making? Does anyone realize the kind of planning that has to go into moving someone like Prince Harry, a member of the British royal family, over into the United States to live and settle here? Like, think about that. Like, when you really think about the logistics of what it would take to move a member of the British royal family across the pond to settle in the United States from a legal standpoint for, getting themselves settled here and getting a home, as well as like the various agencies. I'm pretty sure that Scotland Yard needed to know, the Metropolitan Police needed to know. You had over here in the United States, the FBI had to know. There's a lot of coordination that had to go on. And you mean to tell me that the Queen had no idea? But we were fed this narrative of how the Queen was blindsided? I call bullshit. And when we look at the chaos and drama that unfolded with Harry and Meghan back when they announced that they were stepping back, at the time, we didn't know that this was the circus that we were going to be subjected to almost every single month since they left. This is like 6 years going on now with the same kind of chaos and drama. At what point do we say, okay, this is all manufactured? They keep playing the public for fools, and instead we're treated to this choreographed dance of will they, won't they be going that keeps both sides exactly where they want to be, which is on the front page of the newspapers, whether it be to distract the public from the seriousness of the UK burning down at this moment, or possibly what's brewing here in the United States, such as like what's in those Department of State files. Haven't you noticed? Not many media outlets have covered it or have been going into detail about it. I was the one that broke that story. When you look at Harry and Meghan and the way that they use the media as well as weaponize it, we can pretty much predict how these sort of narratives will go, especially when there are things that they don't want people talking about. You can pretty much predict how they steer the public's attention away from the things that they don't want you looking too closely at, especially when it comes to the political advocacy as well as the censorship work. You notice none of those documentaries that they have been cranking out ever talk about the work that they've been doing, not only with these groups, but also politically here in the United States. I think at this point, how can you not see that this is all theater? You've got the palace playing the dutiful, stern institution, and then you've got the Sussexes playing the persecuted outsiders. I mean, it literally is the perfect loop that feeds the tabloids, it fuels the podcasts, and keeps everyone's name relevant and trending. The thing that's getting under my skin, though, is that we have been told by many of these same media outlets and trusted sources that there is no communication with Harry and the firm. Right. We're supposed to believe that they really did leave, and now what we're seeing is like they're talking as if Harry is still working with the palace. I mean, why is Harry having weekly meetings with them? In the BBC interview, remember? It was reported that Harry was going to extend an olive branch by sharing his calendar. Like, why does that even matter? If you left, you left. Why do you need to consult with the palace? That's why I keep saying that Harry never left the firm. This has been one giant lie, and these people are literally playing the public for fools. So the real question is not whether Harry gets a bed at the palace. It's why are we still being treated to these manufactured narratives like they're spontaneous family news? Like, can't people see that this is a legitimate script here that they're running on everybody? It's being performed. And clearly, it's still working on everybody. Today, I was all over Niall Gardner from Heritage Foundation, questioning him why he was so interested and into the circus, but failing to even acknowledge the seriousness of the things that Harry and Meghan had been involved with here in the United States these past 6 years. He's supposed to be defending or maintaining the Constitution with his work through the Heritage Foundation. You would think that, given that Harry and Meghan have been trying to undermine our great Constitution and our First Amendment, that he would step in. But nope, every attempt throughout the last several years that we all have made, like he can't at this point say that he doesn't know or hasn't seen anything being mentioned about this. I believe that what he is doing by ignoring this is deliberate. I'm getting the feeling that Niall understands the seriousness of this, and that's why he won't touch it. And I also believe that the British journalists also understand, and they won't touch it. Now, I know you're all used to seeing this visual, but now it's time to go a bit deeper on it. When we look at this network map, we aren't just looking at tech policy or NGO funding. We're looking at the potential weaponization of soft power to reshape how information is controlled globally. Everybody sees what's going on right now in the UK and what the UK government wants to do with mandating YouTube and other social media platforms to prioritize and recommend state-controlled propaganda like the BBC or ITV. To understand the seriousness of what Harry is up to his neck in, we have to start at the origins of this whole censorship machine, which is being called by Pepe's grandma on X the Global Censorship Network, and who is a part of it. Excellent researcher Bad Kitty kicks off her posts, citing that the United States-originated infrastructure was primarily driven by figures like Pierre Omidyar and his organization called Reset Tech. Now, they indicate that this isn't a loose collection of activists, but instead a sophisticated, funded machine working to rewrite the rules on digital information, of which we know Harry and Meghan are very much integrated and a part of. So I went ahead and I built this infographic that maps out the backbone of this operation through what is called New America, a hub in Washington, D.C., tied to defense, intelligence, and a web of organizations, including the ASU War Project. Now, if you notice, John Podesta is one of the leading staff members in New America, who many should recall his former chief of staff was Sarah Latham, who worked for Harry and Meghan. Small world, right? We also have Reid Hoffman, who I didn't include on here, his connection with Rene DiResta, former CIA, and their history together with the Alabama Senate race. The network that we see here is deeply entrenched with figures linked to previous administration propaganda teams and the so-called Weaponized Narrative Initiative. These groups have partnered with the likes of the Lincoln Project and the CTI League, organizations known for using debunking and trolling to counter viewpoints they categorize as disinformation. So when you look at this little cluster here and you see Chris Krebs being a part of CTI League, and we know that Sarah Jane Terp had supported Bot Sentinel, you all seeing how this all connects together? Add in to what Harry and Meghan have been doing to the public for the last 10 years with these weaponized narratives and how they use the disinformation campaigns to attack innocent, unsuspecting people like myself and many other Americans, as well as UK citizens. You can now start to make sense as to why we've seen so many things that just didn't make any kind of sense, and why we see so much saturation in the media with these conflicting narratives and how they're trying to steer the public's perception as well as control the narrative that they want us to believe, while not focusing on any of the involvement that they've had with all of these organizations, right? You can see that they're positioned as a critical component in this network, using their celebrity and soft power to further the institutional goals of these globalist entities. And by participating and collaborating and also funding initiatives with organizations like Five Rights and Purpose Australia, they are providing the high-profile legitimacy needed to mainstream these agendas. You get it? But here's the sticky part. We're seeing in the media how Charles has snapped and he's annoyed with Harry. Does anybody really believe that? I don't buy it for a second. The problem we have here is that more and more of this is being exposed. Not so much talking about the monarchy, but talking about what Obama did to Donald Trump. And when we look at the implications for the monarchy, if it does unravel and become mainstream, it's not going to be good. You see, the involvement here constitutes a direct breach of the political neutrality as a senior royal member and aligning themselves with state-driven globalist speech frameworks. No bueno, okay? And by doing so, these two are actively risking the monarchy's foundational role as a unifying apolitical symbol, as well as causing a diplomatic crisis because, of all people to be here, a descendant of King George III, who America broke away from in 1776, only for this dude to be back here trying to take those rights away from us. It's not good. It's not good at all. So when you look at what Harry and Meghan have been doing, they're leveraging their royal status to erode U.S. First Amendment rights and normalize information regulations that operate without any democratic oversight. And this is the thing that people are not understanding. If Charles really was concerned about the reputation of the monarchy, because Harry was doing this and he's not connected to it, he would have stripped the titles and he would have made it absolutely clear that Harry has no involvement with the crown. But has he done that? No. Did the Queen do that? No. Even when the United States congressman wrote to the Queen about Harry and Meghan interfering with the 2020 election. Did anybody take action against these two? No. There's a reason why the media is not going to report on this, and that's because they are complicit. They were also a part of all of this. So it's going to come down to our shoulders to be the ones to report on it, unless the United States government comes forward and does take action against these two because they need to. The issue, though, that we're facing here is that there are so many people who were in collusion and going up against President Trump because they did not want him to get back into office. Now, I just put this together at high level, but if you want to read more about Bad Kitty's post, which is a full thread, This is only one post out of many that has a plethora of information tying all of these organizations together. It's a legit web that Harry and Meghan are very much entrenched in. Yeah, I'm surprised that she didn't mention Harry and Meghan's involvement, especially its ties with the crown, because at the end of the day, this all started with Obama, and the UK had helped.
Barack Obama requested that the British spy agency GCHQ spy on Flynn and Trump using NSA tools since August 2016. The GHCQ spy operation is much more powerful than FISA, hundreds of times more powerful. Do you remember this Trump tweet? Robert Hannigan, the director of the British spy agency, resigned on January 23, 2017, 3 days after Trump's inauguration. Coincidence? Let's see what Judge Napolitano said in March 2017.
Transcribe the digital version into a transcript and give it to him. But if he does that, there's a record of the order.
Right.
So 3 intelligence sources have informed Fox News that President Obama went outside the chain of command. He didn't use the NSA, he didn't use the CIA, he didn't use the FBI, and he didn't use the Department of Justice. He used GCHQ. What the heck is GCHQ? That's the initials for the British spying agency. They have 24/7 access to the NSA database. So by simply having 2 people go to them saying, President Obama needs transcripts of conversations involving candidate Trump, conversations involving President-elect Trump, he's able to get it. And there's no American fingerprints on this.
So you're saying that the British used their version of the CIA to wiretap Donald Trump's phone or
well,
tower?
It's not a wiretap. The concept of the NSA has 24/7, 365 access to every mainframe computer of every telecom and every computer service provider that does business in the United States. And they share that with various intelligence agencies, including the Brits. So the British intelligence agency had this. What happened to the guy who ordered this? Resigned.
Incredible.
3 days after Donald Trump was inaugurated.
So Trump might be right, except for the fact who did it. Unbelievable.
After that GCHQ bombshell revelation, Judge was fired by Fox News. Coincidence? No. The British were not happy, so they threatened the CIA, and the CIA told Fox to fire Napolitano. Who was the CIA director in March 2017?
I encountered and am aware of information and intelligence that revealed contacts and interactions between Russian officials and U.S. persons involved in the Trump campaign that I was concerned about because of known Russian efforts to suborn such individuals. And it raised questions in my mind, again, whether or not the Russians were able to gain the cooperation of those individuals. I don't know whether or not such collusion, that's your term, such collusion existed. I don't know. But I know that there was a sufficient basis of information and intelligence that required further investigation by the jury.
So what I think I hear you saying is there is still an opportunity for indictments, potential prosecutions, accountability from those people who may have lied under oath, like John Brennan, James Comey, and perhaps Hillary Clinton.
Well, that's why I've made the referrals that I have. DNI Gabbard has made referrals.
Yeah.
And why we're going to continue to share the intelligence that would support the ability of our Department of Justice to make bring fair and just claims against those who have perpetrated this hoax against the American people and this stain on our country.
No, it wasn't the Russians who interfered in the 2016 election. It was the British and a foreigner usurper put in the Oval Office by a foreign power. With the funding of George Soros, Hillary Clinton, Obama, the press, and Hollywood elites pushed a false narrative of Russian collusion and advocated for globalism and a soft form of socialism. Antifa was activated to silence pro-Trump voices.
Now, this is just one part of the web that Harry and Meghan have been involved with. As you know, that this web that Harry and Meghan are a part of is deep. So could all of this distraction that we're seeing with will they, won't they, oh, the king snapped, is all just for distraction, and they're just trying to figure out how they're going to mitigate the fallout should this unravel and become mainstream? Yeah, I think there's something to it. And I also think that Meghan was never supposed to go over to the UK because probably she's not allowed to go there. I'm just saying. As I said before, all hands have been on deck to prevent Donald Trump from getting into the White House because they knew that he was a threat to their globalist New World Order. So now when you add common sense here and all this knowledge of information that I've been sharing with you, you can't possibly think that Charles and the late Queen had no idea what Harry and Meghan were coming over here to do. And I believe that they were supposed to go back after a year. The Queen gave them 1 year to try it out. But really, that was to come over here covertly to help the Biden regime and then come back. And that's when I think things went rogue with Meghan. At this point, we will never know if the Queen knew, but given that she gets those red boxes of intelligence, I'm pretty sure she knew. Anyway, that's all I have for you. I know that this is a lot to take in, but this week definitely is going to be interesting. We have tomorrow with the verdict, I guess, in Harry's lawsuit against the Daily Mail, which many are saying is not looking so good. We also have the rest of this week with Invictus and the whole dance that they continue to keep playing of will Meghan show up with the kids or not? And then we're also going to get the narrative spin around, oh, Harry's going to meet up with his dad and, he's not going to meet up with his dad, or they met up, but only for 10 minutes. And then we're going to hear they met up for an hour. I mean, things are going to unfold this week, I'm pretty sure, but it should be interesting. So let me let you guys go. I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
It was such a fraud.